The shuttle shook hard as we punched through the storm clouds of Kelvatha Station, and I grabbed the handrail with both hands. Through the small window beside my seat, I could see the massive floating fortress below us. It was the size of a small moon, covered in metal spires and glowing blue lights, and it hung in the sky of a giant orange gas planet like some kind of impossible jewel. My name is Marcus Vance, and 1 hour ago I had been told I would probably not survive my first week at this place. The alien pilot sitting in front of me was a tall reptile creature with scales the color of wet stone. He had not looked at me once during the entire flight. When I had tried to say hello in his language, he had made a sound that my translator chip called a noise of polite disgust. That was my first warning. My second warning came when he finally spoke, right as we began our landing. "Human," he said without turning his head, "do you know why you are here?" "I was told I am a cultural exchange teacher," I answered. "I am here to teach a class about Earth history." The pilot made another sound. This one the translator did not bother to explain. He just pointed a long clawed finger at the fortress below us. "That place eats soft things," he said. "You should have refused the assignment." I did not answer him. I just looked out the window and watched the landing pad grow larger. I was wearing a simple gray uniform with no rank and no medals. My hair was cut short. My hands looked small and pink against the dark metal of the shuttle seat. To anyone watching, I looked exactly like what the Coalition wanted me to look like. A harmless man, a teacher, a soft thing. The truth was a little different, but the truth was not written on my file, and it was not going to be shared with anyone at this school unless I decided to share it. That was the deal I had made before I left Earth. The shuttle landed with a hard bump. The door opened. A wall of cold air hit me, along with the smell of something sharp and metal, like a blade just pulled from a fire. I stepped down onto the landing pad and saw my welcome party waiting for me. There were 3 of them. The one in the middle was an old soldier of a species I did not know well. He was built like a stone wall, with 4 arms and a thick gray beard that covered most of his chest. The other 2 were younger cadets, standing behind him with their eyes fixed somewhere above my head. Not one of them looked happy to see me. "Teacher Vance," the old soldier said. His voice was deep and tired. "I am Commandant Brell. Welcome to Kelvatha." "Thank you, sir," I said and gave him a small bow. It was the correct greeting for his rank in his culture. I had studied for weeks before this trip. I had learned 40 greetings and 100 small customs. I wanted these people to believe I was a careful, polite, gentle scholar. Commandant Brell raised one of his 4 eyebrows. He had not expected the bow. "Good. Follow me," he said. We walked together across the landing pad and through a large arched doorway into the fortress itself. The hallways were enormous. The ceilings were so high that I could not see them clearly in the dim light. Everything was built for creatures much larger than me. The handrails were at the level of my face. The doors were twice as tall as they needed to be. I felt like a child walking through a building made for adults. As we walked, cadets passed us in the hallway. Each one made me feel smaller. A group of tall insect warriors with blade-shaped arms clicked past and gave me a strange, buzzing laugh. A reptile cadet with a heavy tail looked down at me as if I were a small animal that had wandered into the wrong room. A pale, floating creature with 6 eyes simply stared without blinking as it drifted past. I kept my face calm. I kept my steps soft. I did not meet their eyes. "You will have a small quarters near the library," the commandant said as we walked. "You will teach one class 3 days a week. The subject will be Earth history. The cadets are not required to attend, but some will out of curiosity. I suggest you keep your lessons short and simple. Their attention will not last long." "I understand, sir," I said. He stopped walking. He turned and looked down at me with his heavy gray eyes. For a long moment he said nothing. "Teacher Vance," he finally said, "I will be honest with you. I did not want you here. The Coalition sent you because of a treaty. I must follow the treaty. But this school trains the best young warriors from 12 different worlds. They have spent their entire lives learning combat. They will not respect you. Some of them may try to hurt you. If that happens, come to me. Do not try to defend yourself. You will only make things worse." I looked up at him. I let my face show a little worry, a little fear. It was not hard to do. Part of me really was worried after all. "Thank you for your honesty, sir," I said quietly. "I will be careful." He nodded once. Then he turned and led me to my quarters. The door was so tall that the handle was above my head. I had to stretch to reach it. I heard one of the young cadets behind me make a small laughing sound. I did not turn around. Inside my room, everything was too big. The bed was the size of a small boat. The desk was at chest height for me, which meant I would have to stand on something to use it. The closet was so deep I could have walked into it and disappeared. I put my single bag down on the floor and sat on the edge of the giant bed. My feet did not touch the ground. I allowed myself exactly 10 seconds to feel tired. Then I stood up, walked to the small window, and looked out at the fortress around me. Somewhere in this building were 300 cadets, the sons and daughters of the most powerful families in the galaxy. Each one had been trained since childhood to fight. Each one was faster than me, stronger than me, and armed with natural weapons I did not have. Claws, scales, fangs, armored skin. And each one of them believed I was here to be a joke. That was good. That was exactly what I wanted. I opened my bag. Inside were my clothes, my books, and a small wooden box I had carried with me across 6 jump gates. I opened the box and looked at what was inside. 3 medals wrapped in soft cloth, 1 paper folded and sealed, a single photograph of a group of men and women in dark uniforms standing in front of a jungle so thick it looked black. I was in the middle of that photograph. I was 22 years old then. I was smiling. Only 4 of the people in that picture were still alive. I closed the box. I put it under the bed where it would stay for the next year of my life, hidden and forgotten. That life was not who I was here. Here I was Teacher Vance, the small pink man who had come to talk about Earth history. That night I went to the large dining hall for my first meal at the school. The room was enormous, filled with long tables and the loud noise of hundreds of cadets eating. Heads turned as I walked in. Conversation stopped. Laughter began. I took a tray and stood in line with the cadets, and I could feel every eye in the room on me. That was when I saw her. She sat at the center table, surrounded by a ring of other cadets who leaned toward her as if she were a fire on a cold night. She was tall, even by the standards of this place. Her fur was golden, her eyes were the color of old honey, and her claws were polished so dark they looked like black glass. She wore the uniform of the elite combat class. She laughed at something one of her friends said, and her teeth flashed, and I knew exactly who she was. Princess Kyraves, daughter of the Tharnix royal family, the single most dangerous young warrior in this school. She turned her head. Her eyes found me across the room. I felt the weight of that gaze land on me like a heavy hand. She looked me up and down once slowly. Then she smiled. It was not a kind smile. She leaned over to the cadet beside her and said something, and all of them began to laugh. A few of them pointed at me openly. I held her eyes for one more second. I took a breath. Then I looked down at my tray, picked up my food, and walked to an empty table in the back of the hall. I sat with my back to her. I ate slowly. I did not look up again. Let her laugh, I thought. Let all of them laugh. They had a whole year to learn what I really was, and I had a whole year to decide whether I would ever let them find out. The wind outside the fortress howled against the metal walls. Somewhere far below me, the orange gas giant turned in silence, and in a dining hall full of creatures who believed I was weak, I sat alone and finished my meal in peace. The first day was over. 364 to go. My first real class was scheduled for the next morning at the 8th hour. I arrived 30 minutes early, as I always did. The training room they had given me was small by the standards of the school, which meant it was still larger than most gymnasiums on Earth. The floor was a soft gray material that would absorb the impact of a heavy fall. The walls were padded up to the height of 10 feet. The ceiling had a rack of training weapons, but all of them were set to practice mode, with dull edges and low power. I walked the room slowly. I checked every corner. I looked up at the observation deck that ran along one wall, where instructors and cadets could watch any match that took place. I counted the exits. I noted the position of the emergency medical station. Old habits. When I was finished, I stood in the center of the room and waited. I did not pace. I did not check the time. I simply stood there, breathing slowly, looking at the door. The first cadet arrived 10 minutes before class. He was a young reptile, not much more than a boy by his species, with bright green scales and nervous eyes. He stopped when he saw me, bowed his head once, and took a seat on one of the long benches along the wall. He did not speak. More cadets trickled in. A pair of insect warriors, a heavy four-legged creature who looked like a small elephant with thick armored plates, a tall bird-like being with long, thin arms and feathers the color of storm clouds. Each one looked at me, then looked at the door and sat down in silence. I had expected perhaps 10 cadets, maybe 15. When the 8th hour arrived, there were 40 of them in the room and still more coming through the door. And then I understood. Word had spread. The soft pink teacher had arrived. This was going to be a show. At 1 minute past the hour, the door opened one more time, and Princess Kairavess walked in. She came alone, but her presence filled the room. The other cadets shifted on their benches and made space for her at the center of the front row. She walked past me without looking at me, sat down with the easy grace of a large cat, and crossed her long legs. Only then did she turn her honey-colored eyes on me. "Teacher," she said, her voice was low and smooth like a soft growl. "We are waiting." I gave her a small nod. I walked to the front of the room and placed my hands behind my back. "Good morning," I said in clear, simple, common tongue. "My name is Marcus Vance. I am from the planet Earth. I have been sent here to teach you about my people. Today I would like to begin with a story about the history of human warfare." A few cadets snickered. Someone in the back made a coughing sound that was clearly fake laughter. Kairavess smiled, showing the edges of her teeth. I continued as if I had not heard them. "Many long years ago," I said, "the humans of my world hunted animals for food. We did not have claws. We did not have fangs. We were not fast. We were not strong. But we had one thing that the animals did not have." "Soft skin," called a voice from the back. The room laughed. I smiled politely. "No," I said, "patience." That stopped the laughter. I could feel the room grow just a little more interested. "Humans hunted by walking," I said. "We would find a large animal many times our size and we would walk after it. The animal would run. We would walk. The animal would stop to rest. We would still walk. The animal would run again. We would still walk, for hours, for days, across deserts, across mountains, across rivers. We would not stop. We did not get tired. Slowly, the animal would become so tired that it could not run anymore, and then we would catch it." The room was quiet now. Even Kairavess was looking at me with something that was not quite contempt. Not yet. "This is who humans are," I said. "We are the ones who do not stop. It is how we became the only species on our world. It is how we left our planet. It is how we crossed the stars. We are a patient people, and I hope over this next year to share some of that patience with you." I stopped. I looked around the room. Most of the cadets had gone quiet. A few were still whispering. I had spoken for less than 3 minutes, and I had given them the most honest warning they would ever receive. Then Kairavess stood up. She did not do it quickly. She rose to her full height slowly, the way a wave rises before it falls. She walked forward, one step at a time, until she was standing in the center of the open training floor. She turned to face me. Every eye in the room was on her. "Teacher Vance," she said, "your story is very interesting." "Thank you, Princess. But I have a question." "Please ask." She showed her teeth. It was not a smile this time. "If humans are so patient," she said, "why are they so weak? You walk for days, that is fine. But what happens when the animal turns and fights? What happens when something bigger and faster and stronger simply kills you? Your patience will not help you then, will it?" The cadets laughed. This was the show they had come to see. I kept my face calm. I did not move from the front of the room. "Princess," I said gently, "I am a teacher. I'm not here to fight anyone." "Of course not," she said. Her eyes gleamed. "But perhaps you could allow me a demonstration, for the education of the class, of course. I would like to show the cadets what happens when a soft-skinned creature meets a true warrior. A friendly match. No harm, just a lesson." I stood still. I looked at her. I let the silence grow long enough to become uncomfortable. "Princess," I said, "I do not think that is a good idea." "Oh," she tilted her head. "Are you afraid, teacher?" The room went quiet. This was the moment. Every cadet leaned forward. Every eye was fixed on me. I could see what was happening as clearly as if it had been written on the wall. The princess was testing me. If I said yes, I would be crushed and my class would be ruined for the rest of the year. If I said no, I would be a coward and my class would be ruined for the rest of the year. The only way out was through. I took a long, slow breath. "Princess Kairavess," I said, "I am a teacher, not a warrior. But if you believe a short match will help the cadets learn something, I will agree to it, under two conditions." Her ears lifted in surprise. She had not expected agreement. "Name them," she said. "First," I said, "no weapons, no claws extended to full length, no bites, a simple match. The first one to be held down for 3 seconds is the loser." "Agreed." "Second," I said, "whatever happens in this match, the cadets must promise to listen to my full lesson afterward, without interruption, without laughter." She smiled. She thought I was asking this because I expected to lose and wanted to save face. She did not understand that I was asking for exactly the opposite reason. "Agreed," she said. "Cadets, do you all promise?" A loud chorus of voices answered yes. They would have promised anything to see this fight. "Very good," I said. I walked to the side of the room. I removed my outer jacket and folded it neatly on a bench. I rolled up the sleeves of my simple white shirt. My arms were thin and pale next to the golden fur of the princess. A few of the cadets made small sounds of amusement. I walked back to the center of the floor. I stood across from Kairavess. She was 9 feet tall. I was 6. She outweighed me by at least 300 pounds. Her claws, even at half length, could cut through leather. Her jaws could snap a tree branch. She crouched low, ready to pounce. I simply stood with my hands at my sides. "You will fall in seconds," she said softly. Her eyes were bright with pleasure. "Perhaps," I said. Commandant Brel had appeared on the observation deck above us. I saw him from the corner of my eye. He was leaning forward, his 4 hands gripping the rail, and his face was a mask of horror. He opened his mouth to call out, to stop the fight, to save the poor pink teacher from what was about to happen. But Kairavess was already moving. She came at me like a falling mountain, golden fur and claws and teeth, covering the distance between us in a single leap. I smiled. And I moved. The princess had lived her entire life as the strongest person in any room she entered. She had learned to fight against others like her, others who tried to match her strength, others who crouched and roared and came at her with equal force. She had never in her life fought someone who simply refused to be where she thought they would be. I was not there when her claws came down. I had already stepped to the side, turning my body at an angle, using her own forward motion to carry her past me. I felt the wind of her pass across my face. I heard her land heavily on the floor behind me, claws scraping, turning, her long tail whipping around to balance her. She spun. Her honey eyes were wide with surprise. "Again," she hissed, but she was not talking to me. She was talking to herself. She came at me a second time. Faster now, lower to the ground, a true hunter's attack. She aimed for my legs, meaning to knock me down, to bring me to her level where her weight would pin me. I did not try to stop her. I could not have. She was too strong for that. Instead, as she came at me, I reached down, placed both my hands on her shoulders as if I were greeting a friend, and used the small moment of her forward motion to step over her. I did not jump. I did not leap. I simply placed one foot on her shoulder and walked across her back as she passed beneath me. The room made a sound. It was not a cheer. It was not a laugh. It was a single, shared gasp as 40 trained young warriors saw something they could not explain. Kyra Vess turned. There was no anger on her face now. There was something else, something that had not been there a minute ago, confusion, and under the confusion, the first small touch of fear. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Princess," I said softly, "I am teaching." She came at me a third time. This time she did not crouch or leap. This time she used her full height and her full reach, swinging a massive arm at my head to simply knock me from the air like a bug. I ducked. Her arm passed over me. I stepped inside her reach where her size worked against her. I placed 2 fingers against a point on her side, just below her ribs, and pressed. Her leg gave out. She did not fall, not quite. She dropped to one knee, her eyes wide, her mouth open in shock. She did not understand what had just happened. In truth, most doctors in the galaxy would not have understood either. Tharnik's biology was well studied, but there were certain pressure points that had never been published in any public medical file. I had read the private files. I had memorized every one. I stepped back. I let her stand up again. "Princess," I said. My voice was calm, my breathing was steady. I had not broken a sweat. "Are you all right?" She looked at me. For the first time, she truly looked at me, not at the small pink man she had expected to crush, at the person standing in front of her. Something in her honey eyes had changed. "What are you?" she asked quietly. "I told you," I said, "I am a teacher." And then, because her pride would not let her stop, she came at me one more time. This time I did not play. This time I did what needed to be done. I caught her wrist as she swung. I turned under her arm. I used her own great weight and her own great strength, and in one smooth motion that took less than a single second, I put her on the floor. She landed flat on her back. My forearm was across her throat, not pressing, just resting, showing her that it could press if I chose. My knee was on her upper chest, pinning her down with a simple balance of weight and angle that her huge muscles could not break without hurting her own neck. I held her there, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The match was over. The room was completely, utterly silent. I did not get up right away. I looked down at her face. Her golden fur was ruffled. Her eyes were wide. Her great chest was rising and falling quickly under my knee. She was not hurt. I had been very careful not to hurt her. But she had been beaten, completely and totally, by a soft pink man who had not even raised his voice. I leaned down close to her ear. I spoke in her own language, in the royal dialect of her home world. Quiet, gentle, just for her. "Now, Princess," I whispered, "shall we begin the real lesson?" I stood up, I stepped back, I offered her my hand. For a long moment she did not move. She simply stared up at me. Then slowly she reached up and took my hand. I pulled her to her feet. She was taller than me by 3 feet, stronger than me by every possible measure, and for the first time in her life she was looking at someone the way a student looks at a master. I turned to the class. 40 cadets stared back at me. Every one of them had gone pale, or what passed for pale in their species. No one was laughing. No one was whispering. The insect warriors had lowered their blade arms. The reptile cadet in the front row had closed his mouth. Even the floating 6-eyed creature had stopped drifting and hung completely still in the air. "Thank you, Princess Kyra Vess," I said, "for helping me with the demonstration." She did not answer. She simply returned to her seat slowly and sat down. She did not take her eyes off me. I walked back to the front of the room and placed my hands behind my back, exactly as I had done before. "Now," I said, "as I was saying, the history of human warfare. It is a long story and it will take us many weeks to tell it properly, but I think we have time for it, do we not?" 40 heads nodded as one. I smiled. "Good," I said, "then let us begin." And I did. I began with how our ancestors learned to chase animals across the open plains. I spoke of how they learned to work together in groups, how they learned to send signals to each other without words, how they learned to plan hunts many hours before the first step was taken. I spoke of the first stone tools, and the first wooden spears, and the first fires that let us work through the long dark night. I spoke of how humans spread across our home world, from the hot desert to the frozen north, carrying nothing but our minds and our patience and our refusal to give up. I spoke for 1 full hour. Not a single cadet interrupted me. Not a single one laughed. Not a single one looked away. When I finished and told them class was over, they stayed in their seats for another long moment, unsure if they were really free to leave. Then they stood up, one by one, and filed out of the room. Each one bowed their head to me as they passed, even the tall insect warriors, even the floating six-eyed creature. Princess Kairavess was the last to leave. She stopped at the door. She turned. She looked at me across the empty room. "Teacher Vance," she said. "Yes, Princess. I will be at your next class. I look forward to it." She paused. Her tail twitched once slowly behind her. "Teacher Vance." "Yes, Princess." "Who are you truly?" I met her eyes across the long, empty floor. I let a small, real smile touch my mouth, the first real one since I had arrived at this place. "I am a teacher, Princess," I said. "That is all I am here." She looked at me for a long, long moment. Then she nodded once and left the room. I stood alone in the empty training hall, listening to the soft hum of the air system and the distant sounds of the fortress around me. Somewhere far above, Commandant Brel was still gripping the rail of the observation deck with all 4 hands. I wondered how long it would take him to come and find me. I wondered what he would say. I rolled down my sleeves. I put my jacket back on. I picked up my books and walked out of the room. The second day was not even half over yet. 3 weeks passed. The cadets no longer laughed at me. They no longer whispered when I walked past them in the halls. They did not bow to me the way they bowed to their combat instructors, but they no longer looked at me as if I were a strange small animal wandering through their school. Some of them even greeted me when we crossed paths. A small nod, a murmured "teacher." That was all. It was enough. My class had grown to 90 cadets. The training room was now too small to hold us all, and we had moved to the main lecture hall, which could hold 200. I stood at the front every morning and spoke about my people, the long history of Earth, the wars we had fought and the lessons we had learned, the strange, stubborn way a soft pink species had clawed its way into the stars. I kept the lessons simple. I did not brag. I did not threaten. I did not need to. The story of what had happened on my first day had spread across the entire school within hours. By the end of that first week, I believe every cadet in the fortress knew it by heart. The princess had attacked the teacher. The teacher had not run. The teacher had put the princess on the floor in less than 3 seconds. The soft pink man was not what he looked like. But no one knew what I actually was, and that was exactly what I wanted. Princess Kairavess came to every class. She sat in the front row now, not the center of the crowd, but off to the left side alone. She took notes on a small pad. She asked questions, good questions, thoughtful questions. Her voice had lost the smooth, teasing tone it had carried on the first day. When she spoke to me now, she spoke the way a student speaks to a teacher she respects. It was a strange thing to hear, coming from a 9-foot royal warrior with claws of black glass. But there it was. After class, she often waited for me outside the lecture hall. She would walk with me to the library or to the dining room or back to my small quarters. She would ask me more questions as we walked, about Earth, about humans, about what I had said in class. I answered everything I could. I spoke of things that were in any school history book, public things, safe things. I never spoke of the medals in the wooden box under my bed. I never spoke of the jungle in the photograph. I never spoke of the 3 years I had spent on a world whose name was still marked secret in coalition files. She did not ask those things, not yet. On the 22nd day of my time at Kelvatha, she asked me a different question. We were walking through one of the long outer halls of the fortress. past a row of tall windows that looked out on the swirling orange clouds of the gas giant below. The hallway was empty. It was late in the evening, and most of the cadets had gone to their dormitories. "Teacher Vance," she said. "Yes, Princess. May I ask you something that is not about your lessons?" I looked up at her. Her face was turned toward the window. I could see her reflection in the glass, tall and golden, beside my own small, pale reflection. "You may ask," I said. "Why did you come here?" I thought about the question for a moment. "Because I was sent," I said. "That is not an answer." "It is the answer I can give you, Princess." She stopped walking. She turned to face me. Her honey eyes were serious. "Marcus," she said. It was the first time she had used my given name. "Something is happening in the galaxy, something bad. My father writes to me. The raids on the border worlds are becoming worse. Whole colonies have gone silent. The Coalition fleet cannot stop them. My own people, the Tharnics, we have sent our best warriors to fight and they have not come back. We are losing. I do not say this lightly. My people do not lose. We have never lost a war, but we are losing this one." She paused. She watched my face carefully. "And then," she said, "the Coalition sends a human teacher to our most important school. A single man, no ceremony, no announcement, just a quiet arrival and a quiet assignment. And that man is not what he appears to be. That man can put the strongest cadet in the school on the floor in 3 seconds without breaking his breath. And that man refuses to say why he is really here." She leaned down a little. Her face was now close to mine. "Marcus," she said quietly, "who sent you and why?" I did not answer right away. I looked out the window at the orange clouds. I thought about what I was allowed to say. I thought about what I wanted to say. For the first time since arriving, I thought that perhaps these were not the same thing. "Princess," I said carefully, "walk with me a little longer. I will tell you what I can." We walked in silence down the long hallway. I chose my words as carefully as a man walking across thin ice. "You are right," I said, "that something is happening. I do not know all of it. I am not a general or a politician. I am just one man. But I was told before I came here that the Coalition believes the enemy you are fighting on the border is different from any enemy you have faced before." "Different how?" "Different in the way they fight. Your warriors are trained for honorable combat, for battles with rules, for facing an enemy who stands in front of you and meets your strength with their own. That is the way every species in the Coalition fights. It is the way you have always fought." "Yes." "The enemy on the border does not fight that way. They do not stand in front of you. They strike and run. They attack when you are sleeping. They use tricks. They use lies. They use surprise. They do not meet your strength. They avoid it. They find your weakness and they cut at it until you fall." Kyra Vess was silent. She was listening very carefully. "My people," I said, "have fought wars like that for 10,000 years. Not all our wars, but many of them. It is the kind of war we know. It is the kind of war we are perhaps too good at. And I think, Princess, that I was sent here because someone somewhere has decided that the cadets of this school need to learn that kind of war too, before it is too late." She stopped walking again. She stared down at me. "You were sent to teach us how to fight the way your people fight." "I was sent to teach you about Earth history, Princess. That is what my file says." "Marcus." "That is what my file says," I said again, but I held her eyes, and I think she understood. She took a long breath. She looked back out the window, at the orange clouds and the distant stars. "Who are you really?" she asked. "I am a teacher." "And before you were a teacher?" I was quiet for a long moment. "Before I was a teacher," I said, "I was a man who walked a long way after things that did not want to be caught, for a long time, until they were caught." She turned her head. Her honey eyes studied me. "Your patient story," she said, "on your first day." "Yes." "That was not a story about ancient humans. That was a story about you." "It was a story about my people," I said. "I am one of my people." She nodded slowly. She looked like a woman putting together a puzzle in her mind. A picture was forming. She did not yet see the whole thing, but she could see the shape of it now. "Teach me," she said. "Princess." "Teach me," she said again. "Not just the public classes, not the history lessons, the real thing. Teach me how your people fight, how you fight, how you beat me in 3 seconds on my first day." "Princess, I do not think your father would approve." "My father is losing warriors every week, Marcus. My father would kiss your hand if he knew what you just told me." I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about it. I thought about the quiet orders I had been given before leaving Earth. I thought about the sealed paper in the wooden box under my bed and what it allowed me to do. "All right," I said. Her ears lifted. "All right. All right, I will teach you, but you must agree to my rules. You will not speak of our lessons to anyone, not yet. You will not brag. You will not show off. When the time is right, you will help me teach others, but that time is not now. Do you agree?" "I agree." "Then we begin tomorrow, before the sun rises. The small practice room near the eastern wing. Tell no one, bring no weapons." "Yes, teacher." I began to walk again. She walked beside me. "Princess." "Yes, Marcus." "You will hate me for the first month, I promise you." She smiled. It was a small smile, but a real one. "I already hated you the first day," she said. "You put me on the floor. This will not be worse than that." "It will be much worse than that." She laughed, a real laugh, the first real laugh I had heard from her. "We shall see, teacher," she said. She was wrong. It was much, much worse. I met her the next morning at the 4th hour, long before the sun crept over the edge of the gas giant. The small practice room was empty and cold. She was already there when I arrived, dressed in simple training clothes, her golden fur smoothed back, her eyes bright with excitement. She had come ready to learn secrets. She had come ready to become something more than she already was. I made her stand still for 1 hour. That was the first lesson. Not a move, not a strike, not a grip, just standing still. Feet shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent, arms relaxed, weight balanced, eyes forward, for a full hour without moving. By the 20th minute, she was shaking. By the 40th minute, her breath was ragged. By the end of the hour, her legs were burning so badly that when I finally told her to stop, she fell to one knee and did not stand up for several minutes. "What," she gasped, "was that?" "That was lesson 1, I said. "What did it teach me?" "Patience," I said, "and how to feel your own body. You cannot fight the way I fight if you cannot stand still the way I stand still." She looked up at me. Her honey eyes were full of angry tears. I had warned her she would hate me. "Again tomorrow?" I asked gently. She nodded. She could not speak. "Good," I said. "Go rest." She came back the next morning, and the morning after, and the morning after that, every single morning for the rest of the month. She stood still. She breathed. She learned to feel her own weight. She learned to be quiet inside her own skin. It was the hardest lesson I had ever taught anyone because it seemed like nothing at all, and it was everything. By the end of the 4th week, she could stand still for 2 hours without moving. By the end of the 6th week, she could do it without tiring. By the end of the 8th week, she no longer hated me for it. Then I began to teach her how to move. And that, too, was nothing like what she had expected. She had expected strikes, grips, throws. She expected the kind of training her own combat masters had given her since she was a cub. She expected power and speed and the clash of muscle against muscle. What I taught her was the opposite. I taught her how to step so lightly that the floor did not creak. I taught her how to breathe so quietly that her own ears could not hear it. I taught her how to read the way a person's shoulders moved half a second before they threw a punch, and how to be somewhere else by the time the punch arrived. I taught her how to use another person's strength against themselves, so that the stronger they were, the faster they fell. I taught her how to wait, for hours if needed, for one perfect moment to act. I taught her how my people hunted. And slowly, day by day, Princess Kairavess became something her own species had never seen before. She became quiet. She became patient. She became, in a word, dangerous in a way that no Tharnix warrior had ever been dangerous. And outside our small practice room, the galaxy continued to burn. The reports from the border grew worse each week. 3 more colonies went silent. A coalition battle group lost half its ships to a raid that came out of empty space with no warning. The raiders had a name now. Someone had captured a recording of their battle speech, and translators had finally put a sound to them. The Kuroth. That was what they called themselves. I first heard the name on the 68th day of my time at the school. I was walking through the main hall when I passed a group of instructors crowded around a news display. Their faces were grim. The images on the screen showed a ruined space station, its walls broken open, its lights dark. Beside the image was a simple word in common tongue. Kuroth. I stopped. I stared at the screen for a long moment. One of the instructors, an older Tharnix with silver fur on his muzzle, noticed me. He looked at me with tired, worried eyes. "You have heard of them, teacher?" he asked. "I have heard the name," I said. "They are coming closer," he said. "Every week closer. The border is falling back. Soon there will be no border." I nodded. I did not answer. I could not answer, not honestly, without saying things I was not allowed to say. I went to my quarters. I locked the door. I knelt down beside the bed and pulled out the small wooden box. I opened it. I took out the single sealed paper. The paper was a set of orders. Not the public orders that had sent me here as a teacher. The private orders. The one signed by 3 different people whose names were not written on any public list. I read the orders again, though I knew them by heart. If the Kuroth reached the school, I was authorized to take command. Not the commandant, me. I sat on the floor of my quarters for a long time after that, holding the paper in my hands, thinking about the cadets in the rooms below me and above me, the young warriors of 12 worlds who did not yet know what was coming for them. That night I could not sleep. I got up, I walked to the window. The gas giant turned slowly below me, orange and red and deep brown, vast and calm and ancient. Somewhere beyond its curve, out in the dark between the stars, the Kuroth were coming. I did not know when. I did not know how many. But I knew, with the certainty of a man who has spent his life reading the shape of hunts, that they were coming here next. I returned to the bed. I did not sleep. In the morning, I went to the small practice room an hour earlier than usual. Princess Kyraves was already there. She was standing still in the center of the room, exactly as I had taught her, her breath quiet, her eyes forward, her weight balanced. She opened her eyes when I came in. "Teacher," she said softly, "something is wrong." "Yes." "Tell me." I stood in front of her. I looked up at her tall, golden shape in the dim morning light, and for the first time since I had arrived at this school, I told her the truth. "Princess," I said, "we have perhaps 2 more months, perhaps 3. Then the war comes to this door, and when it does, every cadet in this fortress will die unless we teach them what I am teaching you, all of them together, starting soon." She looked at me for a long moment. Her face did not change. "Then we have much work to do, teacher," she said quietly. "Yes, princess. Let us begin." And we did. The attack came on the 131st day. It came without warning, the way all Kuroth attacks came. One moment the fortress of Kelvatha was floating quietly in the orange sky of the gas giant, its lights burning calmly against the dark, its defense fleet patrolling the outer rings in lazy loops. The next moment the space around us was full of fire. I was in the lecture hall when it happened. I had been teaching. My class had grown to over 200 cadets by then, almost every young warrior in the school, and we were working through a lesson about small group tactics. Kyraves was in the front row, as always. The room was quiet and focused. No one was laughing. No one had laughed in my classes for a long time. Then the whole fortress shook. The lights flickered. The air filled with the low shriek of the emergency alarm. A voice came over the speakers, calm and clear, the voice of a coalition station officer trained for exactly this moment. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Station is under attack. Enemy ships identified. Kuroth signatures confirmed. The room exploded with noise. 200 cadets stood up at once. Voices shouted. Chairs scraped. Half the cadets began to run for the doors. The other half stood frozen, unsure what to do, their faces pale with the shock of a word they had heard only in news reports. I did not move from the front of the room. I simply raised one hand. Stop, I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried. Every cadet in the room heard it. They had heard it every day for 4 months. They knew that voice. When that voice said stop, they stopped. The noise died. 200 pairs of eyes turned to me. Sit down, I said. For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly they began to sit. All of you, I said, sit down now, listen. They sat. The alarm continued to shriek. The fortress continued to shake. Somewhere above us, the coalition fleet was fighting and dying. I spoke to the cadets in a voice that was calm and steady and very sure. Every one of you, I said, has trained your whole life for this moment. You think you are not ready. You are wrong. You are ready. You have also, for the last 4 months, been learning a different kind of fighting from me. Some of you know what I really am. Most of you have guessed. It does not matter. What matters is what I will tell you now. Listen carefully. The room was completely silent except for the alarm. The Kuroth will not attack the way your instructors taught you to expect. They will not fight honorably. They will not meet your strength. They will board this station in small groups. They will use the corridors. They will hide. They will strike from behind. They will try to break you into small, scared pieces and then eat those pieces one at a time. That is how they fight. That is the only way they fight. I looked across the room. I saw Kairavess in the front row. Her honey eyes were bright and steady. So, I said, we are going to do something they do not expect. We are going to fight them the way they fight us. Small groups, quiet movement, strike and move, strike and move. No heroic stands, no great last charges, just patient, quiet, careful work until every one of them is off this station or stopped. Do you understand me? A rumble of voices, yes. Louder. A louder rumble, yes, teacher. Good, I said. Now listen, you will break into groups of 5. Each group will have a leader. The leader will be the cadet in your group with the most combat experience. Each group will be given a sector to clear. You will move through that sector slowly. You will check every room, every doorway, every corner. You will stay low. You will stay quiet. You will not shout. You will not roar battle cries. You will not announce yourselves. You will find the enemy before they find you, and you will stop them, and then you will move to the next sector. Do you understand me? Yes, teacher. Princess Kairavess, I said. Yes, teacher, she said. You are with me. Pick 4 cadets, the 4 you trust most. We are going to the command deck. Yes, teacher. She stood up. Without hesitation, she named 4 cadets, a heavy reptile with dark green scales, a tall insect warrior with blade arms folded back, a small, quick creature with 6 legs who I had noticed quietly as one of the best students in the class, and a Tharnix cub half her size, her own cousin, whose name was Tevves. The 4 cadets stood and moved to her side without a word. The rest of you, I said, form your groups now. Leaders, raise your hands. I will assign sectors. We have perhaps 5 minutes before the first boarders arrive. Move. The room moved. It was, I think, one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. 200 young warriors of 12 different species, who 4 months ago had laughed at me in a dining hall, now moving with the quick, quiet purpose of trained killers. They formed their groups. They raised their hands. I gave them their sectors in quick, hard sentences. Within 3 minutes they were out the doors and moving through the corridors of the fortress. Only then did I allow myself one deep breath. Kairavess was watching me. The 4 cadets behind her were silent. Teacher, she said quietly, the commandant. Yes. He will not allow you to take command. The commandant is likely already dead, princess. If he is not, he soon will be. The Kuroth will have targeted the command deck first. That is where we are going. Her face did not change. She simply nodded. We moved. The corridors of the fortress were chaos. Smoke hung in the air. Emergency lights flashed red. Cadets and instructors ran in a dozen directions, some to their stations, some away from them. I moved through the crowd with Kyra Vess and her four at my side, and I kept my breathing steady and my steps quick and my eyes moving. I noted every doorway. I counted every turn. I listened for sounds that did not belong. Halfway to the command deck, I heard the first of those sounds. It was a soft click, then another, then a very faint scrape like something metal being dragged along a wall. It came from an adjoining corridor off to our left. The corridor was dark. Its emergency lights were out. I raised a closed fist. The five behind me stopped immediately, silent, still, just as I had trained them to be. I pointed at Kyra Vess. I pointed at my eyes. I pointed into the dark corridor. She nodded. She slipped past me, silent on her large padded feet, and disappeared into the dark. 10 seconds passed, 20. Then I heard a very soft sound. Not a cry, not a fight, just a single quick intake of breath cut off in the middle. Kyra Vess returned. Her golden fur was streaked with dark fluid that was not her own. Her face was perfectly calm. 3, she whispered. All stopped. 2 had breathing tanks. I think they were planning to set a gas. I nodded. Good, show me. We entered the dark corridor. There on the floor lay 3 creatures I had seen before only in classified files. The Q'Roth. They were smaller than I had expected, not much larger than a man, thin with pale skin and long thin limbs and wide flat eyes. They wore dark armor. They carried short rifles and small packs of equipment. They looked in some strange way a little like insects dressed up as soldiers. But their faces were intelligent, more intelligent than I would have liked. These were not wild raiders. These were professionals, trained operators. I had read their file. I had expected nothing less. I knelt beside one of them. I checked the pack on his back. Inside was a gas canister, just as Kyra Vess had guessed. A small timed release. They had been planning to flood a section of the corridors with a sleeping gas, then move through and finish the sleepers at their leisure. Princess, I said quietly, take the gas canister. Find the main ventilation control room 2 decks below. Have your cousin rig it to release in the sections we believe are heaviest with Q'Roth. Use their own trick against them. Yes, teacher. She handed the canister to the small, quick, 6-legged cadet, whispered instructions, and sent her on her way with the Tharnix cub as guard. The cub nodded once to her older cousin and followed. The 4 of us continued to the command deck. We found it as I had expected. The doors were blown open. Smoke poured from the inside. I did not need to enter to know that Commandant Brel was gone, but I did enter. I had to. He was lying by the main console, all 4 hands still gripping the controls. His gray beard was streaked red. His eyes were closed. He looked peaceful. I knelt beside him and closed his eyes properly with my fingers. I whispered a small word in his own tongue that meant safe travels to where you are going. I stood up. 3 Q'Roth were in the room. They had been working at the main controls, trying to take over the station's systems. They had not expected anyone to reach them so quickly. They turned as we entered. None of them lived to fire. The heavy reptile cadet was in front of the first before he could raise his weapon. The tall insect warrior reached the second with his folded blade arms in a single long step. Kyra Vess took the third herself. It was not a fight. It was not even really a struggle. 4 months of training in a small practice room showed me, in those 3 seconds, that my students had become exactly what I had hoped to make them. I stepped to the main console. I looked at the readouts. The station defenses were still operating barely. The outer fleet had lost half its ships. The rest were holding. Boarding pods were still arriving. I counted the marks on the screen. 12 pods had landed, perhaps 60 Q'Roth in the station total. 200 of my cadets against 60 Q'Roth. In corridors they had been trained in, using tactics their enemy did not expect. I opened the station-wide communication channel. I took a long breath. This is Teacher Vance, I said. My voice went out to every speaker in the fortress. Commandant Brel has fallen at his post. I am taking emergency command under Coalition Authority number 710. All cadet groups continue your sector clearing. I have ordered a gas release in the lower corridors. It will not harm you. Your breathing masks are already on. The enemies are not. Push through any Qroth you find in the lower decks. They will be slowed. I paused. Cadets, I said, listen to me now. You are doing well, better than well. I have watched many soldiers in my life. I have watched the best soldiers of my own world. You are their equals. You will live through this hour, and you will live through many hours after this, and the whole galaxy will learn what happens when the Qroth come to a place full of patient warriors. Move carefully. Stay quiet. Watch your corners. We are not losing this fortress. We are teaching these raiders what it means to attack the wrong school. I closed the channel. I looked at Kyra Vess. Her honey eyes were bright. Teacher, she said, Authority number 710. A real authority, Princess. You were allowed to take command this entire time. Only in an emergency. She looked at me for a long moment. You are not a teacher, she said softly. I am a teacher, Princess. Today I am also something else. She nodded slowly. What do we do now? I looked at the screens. The last of the boarding pods had landed. The gas was releasing in the lower corridors. My cadets were moving through their sectors. 3 of the cadet groups had already reported sectors cleared, using the simple code signal I had taught them. The fortress was ours, or it would be within the next hour. Now, Princess, I said, we walk the halls, we help where we can, we lead by being seen. The cadets need to know their teacher is with them, so that is what we do. Yes, teacher. We left the command deck. The 4 cadets fell in behind us. We walked back through the corridors of Kelvatha, and we found our students, group by group, and we fought with them where we had to fight, and we moved past them when they did not need us. And slowly, corridor by corridor, the Qroth fell or fled back to their few remaining pods and tried to escape into the fire of the Coalition fleet above. By the 4th hour after the attack began, the fortress was still. The relief fleet arrived shortly after. 3 Coalition battleships, answering the distress call. They docked with what remained of our defense ships and sent boarding teams to secure the station. They found it already secured. They found me standing in the main landing bay, covered in dust, with Princess Kyra Vess at my right hand and 200 young cadets of 12 different species forming ranks behind us. The fleet admiral, an older Tharnix with silver-gray fur, stepped off his shuttle and looked at me for a long moment. Teacher Vance, he said. Admiral. I read the reports. I am told you held this station with cadets. Your coalition trained the cadets, Admiral. I only guided them. He looked past me at the ranks of young warriors. He looked at his daughter standing at my right hand. Yes, his daughter. I had realized it that morning from the shape of his face. Kyra Vess had not told me. She had not needed to. Kyra, he said softly. Father, she answered. He walked to her. He placed one huge hand on her shoulder. He looked her in the eyes. I do not know what passed between them. Some silent thing only Tharnix share. Then he turned back to me. Teacher Vance, he said, my daughter writes to me of your lessons. She writes to me of things I did not think any outsider could teach a Tharnix. She writes to me of you as she writes of no other teacher she has ever had. I think perhaps I understand why now. Thank you, Admiral. He looked down at me. He was very tall. He did not feel tall to me in that moment. The galaxy is changing, he said. My people are losing. Many peoples are losing. We do not know how to fight this new war, but you do you not? Some of it, Admiral, some of us do. Then I think we have much to talk about, you and I. I believe we do. He nodded, he turned. He walked back to his shuttle to give orders. Kyra Vess remained beside me. The cadets remained in their ranks. I looked at my students, 200 young faces, some injured, some exhausted, all alive, all standing. Cadets, I said quietly. They snapped to attention. You did well today, I said. You did very well. I am proud of each of you. I paused. I looked across their faces. I let them see, for just one moment, the man behind the teacher. This is only the beginning, I said. The Kurath will come again. They will come to other schools, other stations, other worlds, and soon they will meet more cadets like you. Because each one of you, beginning tomorrow, will take what I taught you and you will teach it to 5 others. And those 5 will teach 5 more. And we will not stop. We will not stop walking, and we will not stop teaching, and we will not stop being patient until every warrior of every coalition world knows how to fight this war. I paused. We are going to walk the Kurath down, I said, across the stars, for as long as it takes. Do you understand me? Yes, teacher. Louder. Yes, teacher. Good, I said. I turned. Kyra Vess was looking at me. Her golden fur was streaked with dirt and blood. Her honey eyes were bright. She was smiling. It was not the cruel smile she had given me in the dining hall on my first day. It was not the surprised smile she had given me after her first defeat. It was a different smile. A smile I had seen, once or twice before, on the faces of people I had fought beside in other wars on other worlds. It was the smile of Pac. Teacher Vance, she said softly. Yes, Princess. Where do we walk next? I looked out through the open landing bay doors at the stars beyond. The orange clouds of the gas giant rolled far below us. The broken ships of the Kurath raid floated silently in the space around the fortress. Somewhere in the dark, far beyond our sight, more of them were coming. More raids, more attacks, more silent colonies, more frightened worlds. And somewhere in all that dark was the place they had come from. Everywhere, Princess, I said quietly. We walk everywhere until there is no more dark left to hide in. She nodded slowly. She took her place at my right hand. Behind us, 200 young warriors waited for orders. And above us, in the still cold quiet after the worst night Kelvatha had ever seen, the first light of a new morning was beginning slowly to touch the edge of the fortress walls. The patient ones had arrived, and we were just getting started.